Okay, we are starting the event now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the AMTD GFI SpiderNet Scholarship Awards ceremony, followed by a panel discussion. So today's agenda is this. First, Professor David Lee will do a welcome speech, followed by a keynote speech from Michelle Lee, co-CEO of AMTD Digital, followed by the AMTD GFI SpiderNet Scholarship, and then we'll end off with a panel discussion. Without further ado, let's invite Professor David Lee to do his welcome speech. Prof, over to you now.
Thank you very much, Hock Lai. If you would be kind enough to make me the co-host.
You are already a co-host.
Yeah, thank you, Hock Lai. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor today for me to be here. First of all, we are very grateful at GFI and very thankful to AMTD Group as well as Mr. Kelvin Choi for supporting and anchoring the Chartered FinTech Professional Qualification with scholarships as well as internship for the young FinTech talents from Singapore and China, in particularly from Singapore University of Social Sciences and Shanghai University of Finance and Economics. And today we are also welcoming new members of the professional councils as well as the academic councils. So let me begin by looking at the GFI and AMTD award scholarships. The Global FinTech Institute and the AMTD Charity Foundation is awarding the AMTD GFI SpiderNet Scholarship to 20 students from SUSS and SUFI, which you will see them later in the video, for them to complete the CFTP examination and qualification. And the scholarship is part of a strategic partnership between GFI and AMTD, which aims to support and anchor the CFTP qualification, not only with industrial and mentorship, but also thought leadership, as well as cross-border learning journeys. We are really grateful to AMTD for partnering with us. And the students will get internship opportunities in leading fintech firms in Singapore and across the region. They are part of the AMTD SpiderNet, a multi-dimensional and cross-sector ecosystem that is continuously expanding. We read about that all the time in the news of how AMTD is expanding in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and in the region, and to also to connect and promote collaboration between its partners, including shareholders, clients, government bodies, and industrial associations. And also today, we'd like to announce the formation of the new professional council. This professional council welcomes new members, and there are 8 members to the council, which we're going to announce today. And this professional council will guide the GFI in offering continuing education programs to enhance the knowledge and skills of members to meet future challenges. That is a very important mission, and we are so glad to have 8 of them on board to help us and to be part of us. Let me introduce the members. The first is Mr. He Yifan. He's the founder and CEO of Red Date Technology, and I think you are aware that they're working on the BSN. And Ms. Lizette Capriano, which is a senior digital technology specialist from the Financial Services Asia Development Bank. We also like to welcome Ms. Lotte Sibel. She's the Regional Director, Asia Development Bank as well. And Professor Pei Sai Fan, founder of Levi Academy, and he was the Director of Banking Supervision of MAS, and later the Director of MAS Academy. And also, with us today here, Professor Timothy Tong. Thank you very much for being here with us. He's the CEO of AMTD Charity Foundation. And Mr. Tony Yao, CEO of Digital Penang of Malaysia. And Ms. Vicileka Maromi, she's the Deputy Director, Financial Technology Department, Bank of Thailand. And Mr. Zhang Yifeng, Director, Zhongchao Blockchain Technology Research Institute, which is part of the PBOC. And we also like to welcome 3 new members to the Assisting Academic Council, which have 18 members. And the Academic Council itself is responsible for upholding the academic quality and standards of CFTP curriculum and the CFTP examinations, as well as approving university degree programs that qualify for exemptions for some components of the CFTP examinations. We welcome more universities to come on board to seek exemptions for their university, and we have the Academic Council to work closely with you for the exemptions. And the 3 members are from the 3 universities in Singapore. They are Professor Benedict Koh, Professor of Finance, Education, and Associate Dean for Postgraduate Programs, Singapore Management University. Professor Sulaiman Johan, Dean's Chair and Associate Professor, Department of Finance, National University of Singapore, as well as Professor Yogesh Khatri, Associate Professor at the Division of Banking and Finance, Nanyang Technology University. So we welcome them to the council. And these are the members of our Assisting Academic Council members. If you have introduced them the last time, we have from Europe, Dr. Alexandra Bell. We have Professor Chen Yin from China. We have Dr. Gongpil Choi from Korea. We have Choi Siu Kai, ex-GIC, and now in Stanford University. We have Professor Cindy Teng Sin, which is with us today, and she's from China. We have Chua Julian, which is with Drew and Napier, as well as the Council for the Ethereum Foundation. We have Dr. David Hadun, which is with the Philippine Union Bank, as well as he was the Chief Data Officer of MES. And we have Armen Habuyanyan, which is now with Euro-Asia Foundation, but he is also the Senior Advisor of UNDP, Global Center for Technology, Innovation and Sustainable Development, and ex-Deputy Minister of Agriculture of Armenia. And we have Professor Joseph Lim, Associate Professor of SUSS. We have Professor Liu Liya from China. We have Professor Anne Mansion from Australia, and Professor Ming Ming from China. Professor Poon from SUSS. Mr. Paul Shoti, the founder of Shoti Research. Dr. Tan Chun Hui from SUSS. Dr. Yang Li from NTU. Dr. Yu Ying Hui from SUSS, and Professor Zhang Bohui from China and Hong Kong. So the Chartered FinTech Professional Qualification, or CFTP, is developed by the Global FinTech Institute in collaboration with SUSS and SUFI. And the aim of the qualification are to first certify the achievement of candidates who has mastered the knowledge and best practices in the field of FinTech and raise the professionalism in the FinTech industry. In addition, the CFTP provides a pathway for professionals in other industries who aspire to make a career in FinTech. The CFTP examinations consist of 2 levels, level 1 and level 2. And once you have completed that, then you will need to qualify having practical experience before you are awarded the charter. And the exams will be conducted in July and December, and the first level 1 foundation exam will be launched in the second half of 2021, followed by level 1 and 2 examinations at the end of the year. Registration starts 1st February next year, and detailed information will be released as they come along, and you may register them on this website. And these are the fees and resources which you can find on the website. And exemptions, one can apply for the exemptions, and the GFI Academic Council will will decide on the exemption matters, and we encourage university to come forth and everyone who are applying for the examinations to seek exemption. And these are the subjects for level 1. We have level 1A, which is focused on finance, level 1B in FinTech, and the foundation, which is not examinable, which is module 1 and module 2. And then the level 2 will focus on ethics and governance, as well as AI, machine learning and deep learning, blockchain design and programming, cloud computing and cybersecurity, compliance and risk management, as well as the global fintech trends. So to end today's sharing, I would want to say that the COVID-19 pandemic has, on one hand, accelerated the adoption of digital finance, but on the other hand, has exacerbated the digital divide and exclusion. So our mission in the coming 2 to 3 years will be to focus on the research and training on the new areas like green finance and financial inclusion to make finance inclusive, sustainable, and purposeful. So we would like to work with any organization, whether they are regulators, education institution, um, you know, uh, technology company, finance, and across the board. We welcome all to join us and to assist us in this mission. Finally, I'd like to thank uh, all the panel members today for joining us, as well as everyone who has worked behind the scene. I always, today I just had a lunch, and a very senior member has given me a very good advice, saying that we don't, as we serve the society, we don't need to be perfect. We just need to try our best. So I'll remember that, and I would like to share that with everyone and thank everyone who worked behind the scene. And thank you all for trying your best, and thank everybody who are here today. Thank you very much, and I'll pass this back to Hotline.
Thank you, Prof. David. Next, I would like to invite Michelle Lee, co-CEO of AMTD Digital, to deliver her keynote speech. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you, Hotline. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here today to award the AMTD GFI SpiderNet Scholarship to 20 students from SUSS and SUFI to complete the CFTP qualification. AMTD is proud to be a core strategic partner of the CFTP program. So we have the vision that this is the first FinTech talent qualification program with a true global reach, defining a global standard and exploring a comprehensive development framework for FinTech talents, and offer them industry, internship, mentorship, thought leadership, and cross-border learning journeys. Myself, been many years in the banking and FinTech industry, work alongside with a lot of business owners, founders, entrepreneurs, and have groomed talents and provided them with opportunities. I truly believe that apart from classroom learning, which can provide the foundation, talents must acquire on-the-job exposures and training to develop skill sets to take on different challenges and acquire skills, experience to solve real-world problems. CFTP, especially the AMTD GFI SpiderNet Scholarship, is such a program offering students with internship opportunities in leading fintech firms in Singapore and across the region that are part of AMTD SpiderNet ecosystem. AMTD SpiderNet ecosystem is a multi-dimensional cross-border ecosystem that is continuously expanding to connect and promote collaborations between our partners, clients, government bodies, industry associations, etc. The AMTD is always committed to growing innovative talents and leaders in Singapore and across Asia. Our initiatives, apart from the CFTP, also include the recent XC Digital Finance Leadership Program in Singapore. It's a partnership with ISS of NUS, SMU, and Xiaomi. Our first batch of access program graduated in Singapore earlier this month, the same week as the Singapore FinTech Festival. So we have also established the AdWise Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Singapore, together with University of Waterloo, IQ4, and SFA to develop and strengthen cybersecurity capacity and talent building in the region. We also have Singa Green Tech Center of Excellence. It was established with 13 fintech associations across different industry. We aim to train and reskill, upskill workforce and get them ready for green technologies, innovations to adapt and stay ahead of the curve of Industry 4.0. To this front, AMTD is committed. AMTD SpiderNet is committed to helping the talents to tap our global network and to connect them and learn deeply with global fintech community as thought leaders through working together on technology and innovations. So as we join hands with GFI, as US as the SIIFC of the SUFI, we strongly believe our efforts will help to promote the global fintech sector and raise the level of professionalism within the industry. And furthermore, offer a pathway for professionals from other industries to embark on an exciting career in fintech industry. AMTD is proud to be a core strategic partner of GFI and to establish this SpiderNet scholarship to support outstanding students in Singapore and China. We are committed to grooming the fintech talents, empowering the fintech community in Singapore and across the region, leveraging our global network and resources, connecting them to Greater Bay, China, and globally. Thank you. Back to you, Hoklai.
Thanks, Michelle. Next, let's have the next segment on the scholarship. Yes, I will announce the 20 lucky students who are given the first scholarship. From SUSS, Chan Kai Rebecca, Cheong Hai Jin, Choi Hong Bing, Chua Jiao Kun Casper, Edwin Lim Chang Chi, Ho Yuan Yi, Patrick Lien Jin Jie, Rick Chua Kunda, Uttara Venkatachanari, Wong Pei Wei. From Sufei, Zhang Lu Bing, Guo Yue, Ren Su Qi, Gu Yanjun, Huang Yixiang, Zhao Jingyi, Wang Danlu, Zhao Yuqian, Xin Yi, Huang Ziqian. A big congratulations to these 20 students for getting the award. You are not just getting a fully paid scholarship, but also opportunities to do internship in the SpiderNet of companies by AMTD, plus cross-border learning trips. Let's hear some of the testimonials from the students.
Hi, thank you GFI and AMTD for sponsoring my Chartered FinTech Professional Certification. This will help me in my FinTech career. Thank you.
As financial technology is slowly but surely gaining prevalence in our current economy, the Chartered FinTech Professional Qualification will further help me prepare for my career ahead as an undergraduate in finance.
Hey GFI, hey AMTD, thank you so much for the CFTP scholarship, and thank you SSS for facilitating this. I'm really excited, and I think this will help me a lot as finance students learning more about FinTech is definitely going to prepare me for the future. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
很荣幸能够参加金融科技班，也会很开心能够获得这次奖学金的机会，给自己一个可以参加更专业的培训，然后可以参加更专业的考核这样的一个机会。谢谢。
Professional certificate is necessary for practitioners to enter this field. Thank you very much for the scholarship so that we can consolidate our financial theory and improve our computer level at the same time.
I would like to thank GFI and AMTD for giving me the opportunity to take this qualification. I'm sure that what I learned out of it would allow me to come up with more creative, unique, and cost-cutting solutions in the finance industry.
The study of FinTech benefits in learning the updated financial field. Thanks to the chance for me to study FinTech knowledge systematically and give me the chance to attend the CFTP exams.
Thank you, Global FinTech Institute, for offering me this scholarship. As a finance student, I believe that this qualification would be beneficial in the ever-evolving financial industry, no matter whether I'm pursuing a career in banking and finance or FinTech.
金融科技是社会发展的前沿。感谢奖学金，让我们有机会系统性的学习金融科技专业知识，并且参与考核。
I have learned a lot about computer and finance in the financial technology base class. I'm very honored to receive a scholarship which will help me to take professional examination in the future and deepen my knowledge.
Fintech brings me a new perspective on finance. I would like to thank the CFTP scholarship for giving me the opportunity to learn fintech more systematically.
Okay, once again, congratulations to the 20 students and a big thanks to the generosity of AMTD Group for this scholarship. That's the end for the segment for the scholarship. I will now hand over to Malik to start his panel discussion. Malik, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hoklai. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and it's my pleasure to be moderating this panel with a pretty distinguished set of panelists. So in this, we will try and take a quick look at two of the hottest markets when it comes to fintech, not just in the region, not just in Asia, but I would dare say across the world as well. And who better to talk about this than the set of panelists I have the fortune to share this virtual stage with. So without further ado, let me welcome all the panelists, and we'll just quickly go through with a brief round of introductions. So may I start with Michelle, and then perhaps if the other speakers can quickly do a quick round of introductions, then we'll jump into the questions. Michelle, do you want to start with the introductions?
Sorry, just want to clarify, I'm part of the panel.
No, Professor Timothy.
I see.
Part of the panel. Yeah. Let's start with Professor.
Yeah.
Well, let me first congratulate all the scholarship awardees. I think it's a tremendous cohort. Look for good things. Look forward to hearing good things about them in the future. I'm Timothy Tong. I'm a former president of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And after retirement, I joined the AMTD as the CEO of AMTD Foundation. And currently, I'm also serving as chairman of the Hong Kong Laureate Forum. That is an organization to bring a laureate back to Hong Kong on an annual basis in order to interact with the young people, and the purpose is to stimulate their interest to pursue science.
Thank you, Professor Timothy. And can I then request Michael to do a very quick round of introduction, followed by Professor Cindy, and last but obviously not the least, Professor Lee, who actually needs no introduction.
Sure. My name is Michael Sung. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'm the co-director of the Fudan Fanhai FinTech Research Center. And in addition to that, I'm also the chairman of Carbon Blue Innovation, which is a venture building company trying to bring fintech, digital finance, and blockchain innovation to developing regions in the world.
Thank you, Michael. Professor Cindy.
Prof. Cindy is not in yet, so let's start the panel.
Okay. So I think we have Professor Lee, if you would like to do a quick round of introduction, otherwise we'll get started.
I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate the 20 students who has got the award and also welcome the panel. It's a great honor to be on the same panel with Michelle, Michael, Timothy, and of course, Malik. We always have very enjoyable discussion when you chair in many occasions. So I hand it back to you.
Thank you, Professor Lee, and the pleasure is absolutely mine. And before we start, a quick round of congratulations from my end as well, both to you and Hoklai for this initiative, for the AMTD, to the AMTD group for the scholarships, and to all the students who won the scholarships, and may there be many more of their tribe. So on that positive note, let's jump in. And I want to start, since we want to cover quite a lot of important topics, and obviously 45 minutes is not going to be sufficient. So we'll try and zoom in on the most important issues of the day. And let me start with the elephant in the room that many of us have been tracking for the past few days and past few weeks, which is in terms of the regulatory developments we have seen in China. And of course, the much spoken and written about postponement of the so-called largest IPO and the largest fintech um, in the world, Ant Group IPO. And if anybody thought that was a one-off, we have seen a spate of actions after that, including several anti-monopoly steps, which have directly targeted the big techs. So let me start with Michael and Professor Lee. Uh, just share a little bit of your perspectives on what do you think went into these rather drastic actions. And given that we've seen these over the last few weeks, including the pullout of probably the most hyped IPO in recent times, where do you see the fintech landscape evolving in 2021 as we enter 2021? And of course, not simply the impact on China, but since Ant has significant stakes across the region, what does it mean for fintech in the region as well?
Okay. Well, I think what you're seeing really is the Chinese government now taking a closer and closer look at regulating the and really looking into the risk factors, systemic risk factors for the entire financial ecosystem. Right. If you look at the next development plan for China, is going to center heavily on developing this financial ecosystem, making it more resilient and robust, and to clamp down on what it considers bad behavior and also risk modes, right? And so with respect to that, I think, in China, for example, the mobile payments industry has really been dominated by, we call it duopoly, right? It's Alipay and WeChat Pay. They collectively control something on the order of 95, 96% of the mobile payments market in China. They're both private companies. They're what we call tech fin companies, technology companies that have been able to take a dominant position in the financial space because of their very large billion-person ecosystems and a customer base that they're now rolling into financial services, right? So in that environment, they're concerned that there's systemic risk, and also that these tech fins have an unfair advantage in terms of what they're able to do. So, for example, in the case of Ant Financial, they're not beholden sort of as a middleman who is connecting financial products to the customers to have the same reserve ratios. For example, I think it's been reported in the media that Ant Financial has less than 2% reserves, whereas other financial institutions like banks need a 30% reserve ratio, right? So there is, some notion that the tech fins are not playing by the same rules, and certainly I think some of the remarks by Jack Ma on the eve of the Ant Financial IPO probably did not settle well with the regulators as well, where it seemed to probably a lot of people that the technology company was trying to be a little bit more cowboy and cavalier with respect to the nature of the regulation. So I think these combination of factors have come into play to do the drastic move that they did, which was to delay the IPO. Of course, probably the IPO will go on in some form downstream, but now it will be in a more refined mode where some of these new regulations will be put into place.
Thank you very much, Michael, for that articulation. And since while you referenced to Jack Ma's speech, I was smiling because it has been reported in the media as probably the most expensive speech in the world. or the most expensive 30 minutes in the world, which shaved off over $100 billion in valuation. So, well, I'm sure there was much which went on behind the scenes, but thank you for that. I can see that we have Professor Cindy who's joined us as well. So Professor Cindy, if you and Professor Lee would like to add to it, because I'd just like to press on a little more to what you said, Michael. While many of us expect the IPO to happen in some shape or form in either 2021 or probably latest 2022, in my own humble view, the ramifications are much more than just one IPO postponement. As you said, it deals with the whole classification of tech fins, whether they are middlemen, what kind of capital requirements would it entail, and what does it mean for the whole economic and revenue model for these tech fins, which have enjoyed all the benefits of the booming, fintech and lending ecosystem without probably having fair skin in the game according to the regulators. So I would love to hear from Cindy and Professor Lee, if you would also like to chime in, since you are all-weather China expert, on what does it mean from a larger ramification perspective and not just for Ant and its IPO. Cindy, if you would like to go, please.
Come to the panel a little late. Yeah, actually regarding the regulation attitude, I think my personal feeling is that all the media, no matter is it domestic or international, is a little bit over-interpret like the regulators' attitude so far yet. And in the sense that actually, I think the regulation comes from the concern regarding the leverage of this consumer finance product offering not only by Ant Financial and also by other like fintech firms. So that is a generally concern. And when we consider the regulations, the biggest concern always comes with leverage, because that can endanger the general stability of the economy. So if we consider the consumer finance product currently sold in the Chinese market, that actually the leverage can be as high as like 50 times. And that is much higher than the commercial banks. So I think from this perspective, I just feel that regulation is just a reasonable movement of the government. And of course, like that is not to deny all the accomplishment of fintech firms. So we can see that there are so many brilliant ideas and so much achievement like happening in the fintech sectors. And we know there are so many like interesting use cases now, like happening in Ant Financial and in Tencent. So for example, like they are now doing lots of like pharma finance. I think is like more inclusive, and they use this remote satellite remote sensing technology and to kind of like identify the crops, like use crops as collateral to help farmers to get financing services from banks. So that is quite brilliant, I think. Yeah, because before that, they don't have land and they cannot use land as collateral. There is no way for them to have financing at all. But now actually they can use the crops as a collateral. So I just think actually we should focus on the fintech product itself, rather than discuss like whether this is specifically to target any fintech firms. So then they will have more room to develop this new type of products, rather than worrying too much about whether the reaction of the media will give them extra pressure. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Cindy. And I think you made an important point about fintechs or tech fins keeping an open mind about using this as an opportunity rather than as a threat or as a clamp down. And maybe this is the push they need to get out of the duopoly that Michael said, and maybe focus more on innovation and newer products, which is what made them the pioneers in the first place. Professor Lee, I know you said you want to listen more than talk, but I'll ask you a couple of very pointed, quick questions. You can answer them in a couple of sentences if you like. Since we've heard from Professor Cindy and Michael, we've been
after Professor Lee.
Yes, absolutely, Professor Tong. I have a couple of related questions for you as well. And please jump in on this issue as well. What I'm going to ask you, this is open to both of you. We've been seeing this for quite a while now, more than a decade since the rise of the fintechs and then the large big techs in fintech, that they've really enjoyed what we have called as regulatory arbitrage. I have been a former banker for most of my career for more than 2 decades. So I've been on the other side, and many of us used to complain that, hey, fintechs are getting a free run, whereas banks after the 2008 GFC have been subject to all sorts of extremely rigorous compliance and controls requirements. And we've seen no less than Piyush Gupta say this in the public forums many times, that fintechs need to be somewhat regulated at par, if not entirely at par with the banks. So now that we've seen this coming in from China, does this mean that the era of fintechs enjoying significant regulatory arbitrage is over, or it's the beginning of the end? And also related to that, to what Professor Cindy said, is this going to usher in an era where regulators will focus more on activity-based regulations rather than entity-based regulations? Professor Tong and Professor Lee, this is to both of you.
I think the quick answer is this, that I don't think this is the end of fintech. In fact, for many countries, it's the beginning. But we have to be very careful why your compliance cost is low. The reason why your compliance cost is low is because you are fulfilling some of the objectives of what the government is trying to achieve. And in the case of fintech companies in China, they are allowed to grow because they are into financial inclusion. But if you look at the broader picture, that China is trying to stimulate internal demand, internal circulation, as well as external circulation, then the first thing you need to do is to ensure that there is no excessive leverage. And 2 years ago, banks are allowed to go bankrupt with the new regulation. And indeed, we have seen banks in China going bankrupt, and that is to clear off the balance sheet and the excessive leverage. But however, if a fintech company from financial inclusion, you have moved on to an area of debt inclusion or gambling inclusion or leverage inclusion, then I don't think any regulators anywhere in the world will allow you to have a free hand and have low compliance costs in doing that. So if you're a fintech company, it is just wise to focus on what you do best, which is financial inclusion and solving the pain points of what the government cannot solve for the time being. I think most of the fintech companies were doing that. And I think somewhere along the line now that it's being said that the charges is higher and they are excessively leveraged. And I think that triggers it. And if you want to stimulate internal demand, external demand, you don't want a situation where you start to stimulate the economy, the leverage ratio immediately shoot up. And you have to solve the problem of deleveraging first before you stimulate your internal demand. So I can see where China is moving. So back to you.
Thank you, Professor Lee, and that's a great point. It's not just related to the big techs in China. We are seeing it all over the world. The record level of public and private debts that we've seen have left many fundamental economists quite concerned about it. But you've raised a very important point that what started off as an activity to drive financial inclusion, over a period of time started becoming a systemic risk. And obviously, as a regulator, you cannot turn a blind eye to that. Professor Tong, would you like to add to that? And then I'll ask you another question, zooming in from China to ASEAN.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. What Professor Lee just said, I fully agree. I think in the case of China, it has such a large population, and a large fraction of the population has become so technology savvy, and more specifically, digital technology. So many people nowadays are so familiar with doing shopping online, handling their transactions online. And the scale is just simply enables them. Any digitally related business can grow at a very fast pace. So what happened was that the Chinese government in recent times have become more and more concerned about the size of these technology giants, and consequently have proposed a rule to regulate certain areas of their practices, including data, antitrust, and so forth. But by no means do I think that this is the end of fintech. In fact, I think that fintech has a tremendous future. It is the new frontier of enabling technology in the financial world. So looking into the future, I think it is a matter of balancing rules that will be promulgated, and also the services that the financial industry would deliver using fintech. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tong. And while you were saying, I was just remembering something that I was joking with a friend of mine last week. He's in the USA, and we were just kind of exchanging notes, and I was joking that there isn't much these days that the USA and China agree upon. Probably one of the few areas that they really seem to be aligned on is curtailing the big tech. So it's one of those signs of the times that they can't, USA and China can't see eye to eye on anything. But when it comes to controlling the monopolistic power and the unbridled power of these big techs, there seems to be an unspoken alignment on that. So thank you for articulating that. I would like to go on a little further on this track. Professor Tong and Michael, I would like you to also join this. Now that we've seen the Chinese giants not only establish this kind of a huge monopoly in China, but having established significant stakes in different leading fintechs and e-commerce companies across the region through joint ventures, through investments, whether you see Philippines or Indonesia or Vietnam or even India for that matter. In your view, after the China story, which has been touted as a global case study, and then the India fintech or the financial inclusion study with UPI, etc., what is your view? Is ASEAN the next frontier? Is ASEAN the next growth engine when it comes to fintech? And if so, what would be your one or two key predictions or focus areas that you would see as the most significant opportunities when it comes to the ASEAN nations? So Professor Tong and Michael.
Sure, yeah. Well, many of us here at the AMTD certainly see ASEAN as an emerging player in this fintech world. If you just look at the population, okay, it has the third largest population in terms of the area as compared to the most populous countries in the world. So there are a lot of people in this area. And in a way similar to China, many of them are beginning to also become more technology savvy. Digital technology, it's also penetrating into these markets. So I think the ingredients are certainly there to propel yet another area to take advantage of fintech and therefore support economic growth in a very fast pace. So I do think that the ASEAN area is the next area that we should all pay attention to.
Okay, I mean, following on with what Timothy said, I really think you look at some of the major macro trends, right? Post-COVID, we have this rapid push to digitization, and any offline businesses are suffering dramatically, but any online businesses are thriving in this environment. If you look at some of the stocks on on this S&P, for example, that are related to the digital economy, they've gone up in 50% in the last 6 months. So we see that, therefore, there is this drive to digitization. And the other major factor really is that if you talk about ASEAN countries, 90% of these companies, sometimes 50–60% of GDP is in SMEs, right? And the SMEs are the ones that are the most fragile and hit the most, because they cannot join the digital economy, use the new fintech tools to be able to do the business they want to do. So I think the great opportunity and the great equalizer for financial inclusion and developing the financial ecosystems in these regions will be specifically fintech tools, things like cross-border payments, things like trade finance. If everybody has a digital wallet, some of the basic fundamental blocks to be able to access the digital economy and transact cross-border and things like that. So that's the opportunity. I would like to point out, though, that despite our earlier discussion in terms of maybe China readjusting with regards to its sort of fintech play, I do believe very strongly that China is going to take a leadership role in both fintech infrastructure, adoption, enterprise adoption as a catalyst, not just in China, but globally, and specifically with a focus in ASEAN. And also as well as digital finance. I think Professor David Lee and I share an interest in, for example, the blockchain-based service network, the BSN, which is this blockchain interoperability framework that has been actually massively adopted already in 130 cities in China. It's basically become an infrastructures to allow cross-chain, cross-cloud, cross-framework type activity. That interoperability is fundamental for the next phase of developing into the digital economy. And because of that China effect, and because China is usually the largest trade partner for most of these developing nations, for example, the new RCEP that's been freshly minted, it will likely become fundamental infrastructure to allow those trade partners to trade with China, but not only with China, with each other as well, right? And on top of those fintech rails, that blockchain interoperability rails, you put the fintech stack on top. And then the other point is, of course, on the digital finance side, China's also catalyzing central bank adoption of digital currencies, right? I think because of Libra initially, but then really China, jumping in front of this and will be deploying their digital currency likely before the Olympics of 2022. This is causing, what BIS is saying, 80% of central banks around the world to take a look at digital currency seriously. 50%, I've been told, are going out of POCs and things like that. So if you look at what China's going to do there, it has already catalyzed a lot of effect. And it won't just be the digital currency, but beyond that, I think China is really gearing up to regulate digital assets, even though it looks like pretty against crypto, which it is, unregulated form of crypto. But the digital, the regulated digital asset version, I think, will be around that corner, and it's going to flow through all the fintech rails that sit on top. So I do believe that China will still be driving a lot of fintech adoption in the region for the decade to come.
Thank you, Michael. And that was like you power packed so many key topics in 5 minutes. It almost opens up 3 different segues for me to take this discussion forward. But you made a couple of very important observations. One is in terms of the areas of fintech that you find interesting, and I think many of us are aligned, be it cross-border remittances or MSME financing. And you are absolutely spot on. Many of us have seen it in different countries about the pain that the micro, small, and medium enterprises have felt in this period. It almost seems like a tale of 2 economies when the big guy, we see the stock markets at record high, and on the other hand, we are seeing, the small guys shuttering shop like never before. So it almost seems to be a tale of 2 diverging economies. So it's very important that we continue to keep our eye on the MSMEs, which, as you rightly said, form about 90 or 95% of the economic activity in most of ASEAN. So thanks for bringing that out. I'd like to now quickly go across to all the four panelists and ask a very pointed 30-second or a 1-minute question, since we've kind of seen a flavor of China, and now we've kind of zoomed into ASEAN. And let's start with you, Michael, since you are here, and then we'll go to Professor Cindy and Professor Timothy as well. If you had to name one country in ASEAN that you find most exciting for fintech or most promising for the next 5 years, what would that be? And if there is one vertical or one segment that you had to say that, hey, if I had $1 million to invest in or $10 million to invest in of my own money, this is what I would be focusing on. Michael, you want to take a start?
Well,
and you're not allowed to say Singapore. Otherwise, everybody.
Okay. Well, that's too bad, because that's where I was going. Really, I think, what I am is a venture builder, and what that means is I think about scale. I think about how we can take fintech innovation and get it to the most people with the largest market. And so for me, I'm really excited about Indonesia, right, with the size of the population, and I think it's really poised for success. Looking at, and the opportunities would be in these areas of allowing payments and remittances to go cross-border, and also on the trade finance side. So we are actively looking at those two spaces and how to put together solutions, specifically, again, customized to SMEs. There's a lot of companies that are focused on non-SMEs or things like this, but I think really it's, if you can crack the nut on the SME and lower the bar to allow digital finance to apply to basically the common denominator of society, I think you can really make a lot of impact. So we were really focused on that.
Thank you, Michael. So Indonesia and MSMEs. Same question to you, Professor Timothy.
Oh, if I have to just pick one place for the immediate future, I think I would pick Singapore, simply because it is.
Actually, I was going to say this is a trick question. So because I knew everybody would say Singapore, I put a condition saying Singapore not allowed. It's not in the multiple choice question. So outside of Singapore, which market would you say?
Okay, sure. Outside of Singapore, I think I would follow Michael's choice. I would also take Indonesia, simply because of the potential. The scale of the factor is tremendous, and things are already happening. So I think it has tremendous potential in the five years.
Thank you. Same question to you, Professor Cindy. And again, same condition. You cannot say Singapore.
Then I will skip Indonesia too. I think, yeah, if I must pick one, maybe I will think about India. And the logic is that, like, we consider the population, and I think the fintech, where fintech can play the most important role is like when there is enough long tail customers, and we can see that like Indian is like China have a very big population, and of course like when we consider that there are lots of if take one section, then I'm particularly interested in the like agriculture finance, because there are so many farmers, and the farmers is always difficult for them to get financing support from financial systems. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Cindy. And while India is technically not a part of ASEAN, it's a very valid point that you raised. And in fact, my own belief and my own assessment and observation in the region across Asia is, after China, India is certainly a market to watch out for. And I have been quite involved in that ecosystem. I spoke at a couple of conferences in the past couple of weeks as well. So certainly a very vibrant and exciting ecosystem. And again, agri-tech, as you mentioned, is certainly an area. So I think I'm seeing a fair bit of consensus evolving, either India or Indonesia, in terms of the market size and opportunities, and MSMEs, agri-tech. These seem to, the more untapped areas seem to be the areas of opportunity, and of course, cross-border opportunities for more efficient transaction flows. With that, Professor Lee, I come to you the same question. You are, of course, very active in the ASEAN ecosystem as well. and you are a big proponent, as we've discussed many times, of digital financial inclusion. So I think we all of the panelists seem to be converging around the same ideas. How would you probably like to distill or summarize or give your own perspectives?
It's always very nice to be on a panel where everybody experts. So Micah, Cindy, and Timothy actually has given all the answers. So if I have to find a different answer, away from Indonesia, away from you know, scale, then I would just say the speed of scaling, right? Just give a different dimension. So instead of looking at the scale of 280 million people, I will look at in the short term, what is the speed of scale? Then I will look around the 10 countries, and Singapore is out, you know, and non-ASEAN countries out. Then I would have to pick Thailand. I would have to pick a place where, you know, there is, because you want to talk about digital economy, you need to talk about connection, where the country is wired up, it's easy to use whatever digital means, devices that we have, and have reasonable size. So I will choose Thailand being mid-size and also fairly well wired up, you know, connected in the short term. But in the long term, I think they have answered that. But I think wherever it is in the long term, every country is in ASEAN, like you say, Malik, you already given the answer. ASEAN is the place. There's no doubt. Micah and you talk about building up digital infrastructure, because wherever we are, the virtual space has got no border. Everybody is a node. As long as the digital infrastructure is up and we can connect with each other, then it's going to fly. So it doesn't matter whether in Indonesia, you're in Philippines, small island, or in Thailand, we just need to plug in. But in terms of speed of adoption, with ready infrastructure, I'll pick Thailand.
Thank you, Professor Lee. And while prima facie that did perhaps sound like a maybe unconventional answer for some of our audience, I actually wholeheartedly agree with you. And you and I have been on panels together with folks from the Bank of Thailand as well. So I think it's one of the central banks. If you keep aside HKMA or PBOC or MAS, Bank of Thailand is one of the regulators that I personally respect a lot. And I have been tracking for the past few years in terms of their initiatives, be it their launch of prompt pay many years, in fact 3 years ago, and the scale up there, or their launch of the national QR code systems before any other country. So certainly a lot of that enablement is happening because of the progressive mindset and policies of the central bank over there as well. But we've had a very interesting spectrum of perspectives here from India, Indonesia, and Thailand for a different set of reasons. And I saw one of the questions here asking, what about Vietnam? So is that something any of you would like to take a stab at? Michael, I know you have to go. So maybe before you leave, would you like to answer that? Do you have a particular view on Vietnam? Strongly yes, strongly no, don't know, don't care?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I personally have not, or my firm has not really broached into Vietnam. So we're having exploratory conversations. Certainly, the dynamics there are very interesting. That would be exciting to get into as a very dynamic economy that is fast growing and emerging into the spotlight. A lot of cross-border flows, a lot of new movements of manufacturing, for example, into the region from China and other places. So I do feel that there will be a strong need for I would say innovative fintech solutions in the region, and we're actively exploring. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. And we know you have to go. So once again, we thank you for your time and your very incisive perspective. So feel free to log out if you want to. And of course, if you want to be around and can be around, it would be great. We'll probably try and take a couple of questions. So before I move forward, Hoklai, I just wanted to check how much more time do we have left? Then I can address my questions accordingly. You are on mute. I cannot hear you.
You have about 5 more minutes.
Okay, so we have limited time. So many more topics that I wanted to discuss with this fairly knowledgeable panel. But let me try and zoom in. And this is where I will go to Professor Lee and also all the 3 academics in the group, Professor Timothy and Professor Cindy as well. When we talk about enablement of fintech, and digital financial inclusion. Often we talk about, the technologies enabling it. We talk about, the ecosystem. We also talk about policies and regulations, and which regulator is doing what, as we heard in great detail about the steps taken by China. And I now want to zero in on what I consider as the fourth pillar of fintech enablement in the region, which is really fintech talent development. And if one were to distill the core objective of this webinar and what we've seen in the early part, including the scholarships and the great work that GFI is doing, and the academics here on the panel, clearly there is a significant need and also a significant gap when it comes to fintech talent across the region. So maybe all the three professors in our forum, Professor Lee, Professor Tong, and Professor Cindy, can you maybe share quick perspectives on what would you consider as one or two of the most important variables or elements that can help bridge this gap between the fintech talent gap, and how we can develop more fintech talent, apart from, of course, the great work that you all are doing and what we've seen earlier.
You want me to start first?
Sure, please go ahead.
Happy to do that. I think fintech talent shortage is a very severe problem that we all have to be concerned with. Different reasons. Part of it is because the fintech area is still quite new. Okay? Now, in Hong Kong, the good thing is that a number of universities have started offering degree programs in fintech. But a very serious issue that should also be looked into is people who are already working in the financial sector, especially those who have been in this industry for some time, but really want to upskill or reskill. AMTD is very concerned with this particular problem. And that is why we collaborate with a number of institutions to offer programs to help individuals to gain knowledge in fintech. Not necessarily to get a degree, although we fully support that, but in terms of training or retraining of people, that is an area that much work needs to be done.
Thank you, Professor. And before we go to Professor Cindy and Professor Lee, once again, I think on behalf of all the attendees here and on behalf of myself, congratulations to you and the AMTD Foundation for the fabulous work you are doing in walking the talk. It's easy to talk about developing fintech talent and the skills gap. I have been, I have seen this quite closely firsthand. I have been involved in helping a few regulators in the region, including OJK in Indonesia, develop the national policy papers on how to bridge the fintech talent gap in the next decade. Clearly a key part and a key enabler of that will be the role of the private sector and the industry in enabling it. It can't only be left to the universities. It can't only be left to public policy specialists and government departments. There has to be an active role of the industry. And as I said, the industry has to walk the talk. Talk is cheap. So my compliments to you and AMTD Foundation for enabling that. A long way to go, but
Chairman, Mr. Calvin Choi.
Absolutely, Calvin, Michelle, you and the entire AMTD family, and of course Professor Lee and Hockley for bringing together such an initiative to life. Now let me ask the same question to Cindy and Professor Lee. While we understand that there is a talent gap, and I think Professor Timothy raised an important point of how we can bridge it is in terms of upskilling of the existing workforce. Many of us, including myself, we come from a financial services banking background, and clearly the lowest hanging fruit in terms of trying to get talent is from that space. In your experience and in your view, Professor Cindy and Professor Lee, how easy or difficult is it to teach an old monkey new tricks? How easy or difficult is it to get career bankers like myself who've spent 2 decades? And I've been fortunate. In fact, I consider myself, thankfully, an exception because I have been in digital banking and electronic payments for most of my career. But if I were, let's say, a banker who's worked in trade finance or transaction services or retail banking, I would probably not be as attuned to thinking digital first as I am because of my, if I may say, fortune in pursuing the digital path in banking. But given what Professor Timothy said, that this might be the lowest hanging fruit for us, we cannot create a factory churning out digital financial, chartered financial professionals, I also teach fintech as for the MBA programs at Asian Institute of Management, but it's a slow burn process, one cohort, two cohorts a year. You can't create thousands of fintech professionals overnight. In your view, Professor Cindy and Professor David, how easy or difficult is it, and how successfully can we address this lowest hanging fruit of upskilling the existing financial services pool? Professor Cindy, you want to go first?
Okay, so then I will go first. So actually considering the training for fintech talents, I personally feel actually is quite difficult. And the reason is first, the fintech is a combination of finance and technology, of course. And that actually requires the talents to, first, they have to have like a very thorough foundation of financial knowledge. And meanwhile, they have to be a quick learner of all those technologies. And the other reason is like when we teach in the university, most of the time we are good at like a theories, but to be honest, actually for what's happening from the practice sector, actually we have little knowledge. So that's why here I really feel that we are so grateful that we have a company like AMTD, and they are really have the commitment to contribute to the education of fintech talents. And the reason is like when I started our fintech master program, I consider like after the 2 years of training, and what shall I expect from our students, like what kind of a role they can play like in their future career. So it's like when we consider this fintech, this side is like a financial products, and this side is like development. So development requires like it's quite technical, and the other side is quite financial. And we are trying to train the students and who can act in the bridge of these two parts. And reach these two parts actually is completely independent before. But now we have to consider to let our students have all the skills required in this new digital economy. So that's quite a challenge. And so without the support of like the private sector, I think it's really difficult to achieve such goal. So here, thanks again, like AMTD, for all your support for our like education practice. Yeah, and we do hope that we can have more company and to help us to train students, apply all the theories into practice. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Professor Cindy. And so basically how to bridge the gap between fin and tech, and also how to go beyond frameworks and theories, because fintech is very little about theory and much more about what's happening in the industry. And when you were sharing this, it brought a smile to my face, because I have experienced the same as well when I was teaching my students. In fact, they are so attuned to the case study method. They were saying, prof, cases. And I said, I instead brought in industry practitioners, fintech leaders, bank digital heads, etc., to share with them what's actually happening. And I said, hey, this is your case study. In the fintech sector, it's such a new sector, and there is so many developments which are happening real time every few months, every year, that it's not like studying strategy where you can pick up a case written 10 years back or even 5 years or 3 years back. So If you want case studies and that methodology and pedagogy in fintech, go to the industry and do a real life case. That's probably the best way to learn fintech. So thank you for bringing that to life. Professor Lee, I know we are almost out of time. So if we had to conclude and carrying on from what Professor Cindy said, we have to find the right combination or the right balance, and we have to create talent which can bridge the gap between fin and tech. In your view, what is more important when we teach fintech and when we try and bridge this talent gap? Is it the fin part of it, or is it the tech part of it? And if you had to give one suggestion for all of us to conclude on how we can go beyond theory and frameworks to making fintech education and fintech talent development real life, what would that one suggestion of yours be? Thank you.
I just want to say a few things. First, I think it is a great honor for GFI to work with AMTD on this because they are the right partner. The reason being that if you walk into any tech giant, in the short term, you will think that there's a real shortage of developers. Indeed, we have. So if you think that the computer science and can drive the entire digital space, then that may be correct in the short term. But in the long term, even now, you look at any giant tech company, 30% are really tech people. The other 70% are still the business strategies, the accountants, the lawyers, and so on. But they are all digitally literate. So it's important to understand that in the short term that we have a gap of technical knowledge, and the computer science department should drive that gap to be filled up. And once that gap filled up, the other 70% are the most important, because in business it's about strategy. In business it's about ethics. In business it's about cost. In business is about understanding the fintech culture, regulatory environment, and so on. And if you look at the way we have designed the syllabus, we place a lot of component on the ethics, the regulation, the future trend, besides the technical basis, because the technical background is just one layer, and a lot of very brilliant people, they can learn everything online. Vitalik has never been to university, but there are a lot of people like Vitalik in the programming space that they learn programming on their own. They don't have to go to the university. But if we are talking about ethics, about legal, about regulation and so on, you really need to have somebody to guide you. The interpretation is very different. So you still need the lawyers, you still need the accountants to look at how the treatment of your digital asset and so on. These are all very important, and I think it's just the most important to me, because you asked me, is ethics. Because if you have a very clear mission and you see there's a convergence of tech and social objective now in the world because of the disparity, then it's very important to ensure that your future compliance cost is at the lowest. And the only way to have your compliance cost, which is a big component of your business cost, is to understand how the regulator thinks, right? You understand how the regulator thinks, which means that whether it's ethics of AI, ethics of blockchain, ethics of the way of doing business, and how the technology is converging with social objective is the key. That's why you look at the FinTech Festival, we talk about green finance, we talk about financial inclusion, and so on. It's key to the competitiveness of the company. You need to have a lot of people in the company who understand the ethics, the strategy, and the regulatory environment besides just the tech part. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Prof, for that very nice encapsulation to conclude. And I must say, I'm not one bit surprised when you spoke about ethics. I have seen you talk about it consistently and passionately for the past few years. And I think you were absolutely spot on when you said that the next generation of fintech leaders and the pool of talent that we are trying to develop must be grounded in digital ethics, must think beyond only the profit motive to the social objectives. And as Michael said, especially after this pandemic, we've probably seen the worst year on record in our lifetimes, if not probably 2 generations. So the need for using digital finance for inclusive societies, for green finance, for sustainability is more pressing and more immediate and more strategic than ever before. And finally, you referred to the fintech talent understanding the mind of regulators, not just regulations, but the objective and what goes behind those regulations, and how can we start being more aligned with self-regulation rather than having a cop telling us what to do and what not to do. So that's these are all absolutely very valid and excellent points, and a great way to conclude this panel. I would love to go on. There were many more things I was hoping to discuss with such an illustrious panel, but the clock is ticking. So with that, I have to conclude this panel, but thank you once again, Professor Timothy, Professor Cindy, Professor Lee, and Michael, for sharing your perspectives. We've covered some important topics, if not all, on the future of fintech and what would be the key themes of tomorrow for fintech in Asia, in China, and in ASEAN. So thank you very much once again. I truly enjoyed this discussion. Hoklai, over to you.
Thanks, Malik, for your wonderful moderating, and of course, our expert panelists for your insightful sharing. Before I end the event, on behalf of the Global FinTech Institute, I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.